Hello and welcome to Movie Night Spotlight. I'm your host David Lindsay, and in this episode, my friend Liam and I met up via Google Hangout and discussed the 2011 version of The Thing, as well as the 1982 John Carpenter classic. We had a little bit of technical issues, mainly on my part, with some internet connection problems, and so there's some glitches here and there, some delays. Um, but you know what? We're chalking it up to being experimental for us to keep doing podcasts this way, try something a little bit different. So we hope you enjoy it. Give us tons of feedback at the website, comcaf.com. All right. Hello and welcome to Movie Night Spotlight. I'm your host, Dave Lindsay, and I'm joined today via Google Chat with my buddy, Liam O'Leary.
Sup diggity.
How's it going, Liam?
Not too bad. How are you, sir?
All right, so doing well. So there might be a slight delay with this because we are discussing this over Google Chat, so bear with us, folks. But Liam's choice for movie to discuss today was the 2011 version of The Thing.
It's not necessarily a remake so much as a prequel to what I imagine is probably everyone's favorite version, the John Carpenter 1982 version of The Thing.
Which itself was a reimagining or a remake of the 1950s version of The Thing, right?
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Have you seen that original one, or just the John Carpenter one and this new 2011 version that just came out?
I've only seen the newer versions. I've never actually seen the 50s one, but I know of it because my parents saw it. My parents remember it rather vividly, actually.
All right, cool. And did they share any of their comparisons with you with the John Carpenter one from 1982, or didn't go into it?
My parents hate the new ones. Hate them, hate them, hate them. They can draw the parallels between them, but they're just like, no. This version is The Thing. These crappy remakes, you know.
All right, so before we discuss the 2011 version of The Thing, you've been very passionate about the 1982 one, the John Carpenter one with Kurt Russell for years. We watched it one October a few years ago when we were doing our horror movie thons at movie night. What is it about that 1982 version of The Thing that you love so much?
There are a couple of things. One of my first things, and I'm assuming, you know, anyone's watching this has probably seen the 1982 version, so I'm hoping that I'm not spoiling anything for people, but...
Spoil away. You've heard the other episodes of the show. We've had spoilers left and right, so just go for it.
Okay. But the 82 version is it is a clinic in misdirection. I feel like that whole movie, John Carpenter is making you think that this person's a thing, or this person's a thing. And when someone is revealed to be the thing, it's always the person who you don't even think about. It's the person who doesn't really have much characterization, doesn't really have many lines, but they're there and they kind of just blend into the background. Or they're people that you're like, no, there's no way he's the thing. Why would the thing be this guy? This guy's nobody. But that's what's so great about it, is that there's a particular scene where Kurt Russell is testing out everyone, you know, trying to find out who's the thing.
Right, and they have a similar scene in the new version, yep.
Yes, they do, and I like how they had a different way of doing it. They
with attacking everybody's teeth, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't just straight ripping it from the 82 version. But there's a particular scene where he's running the test, and he's looking at the guy who's running the base, and he's like, yeah, it could only be you, Gary. It could only be you. You got to be him. And he literally isn't even looking at the person's blood that he's testing, but then sure enough, his blood just jumps up and all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And his head splits open, and he turns into the Thing, and there's this just massive carnage, and one guy essentially gets his face ripped off, and it's chaos. And at that part of the movie,
Gotcha.
you're after the previous scene, you're figuring, no, there's no way it's just gonna hit you like that right after it. You figure there's gonna be a lull, but it just hits you, bam, bam, and I imagine, certainly for me, the first time, I was just like, holy shit! I couldn't even believe it. And that's what I want in a horror movie. I kind of want to be, thinking that I'm going to get a moment of rest and then not getting it. It keeps you on
Right.
your
You want to
toes.
be, yeah, you want to be throwing that curveball, and especially now where we've seen so many horror movies and a lot of them become cookie cutter. You can almost see where things are going to be going. So when they do throw you that curveball or throw you that something a little bit slightly that you don't expect, it makes it a lot more fun.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So
I
2011 one came out.
suppose.
Obviously, you were interested in watching it. When did you first see it?
Oh, naturally. Hmm.
When did you first see the new version of The Thing?
Uh, I want to say, either it was May or June. My DVR says that I recorded it in May, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I actually watched it at that point.
So it didn't obviously see it right in 2011. You saw it this year.
Yes,
I watched it recently the other night. I don't know if you watched it again before we had this chat.
I did.
Did it live up to your expectations? Did you have any expectations?
I did, but at the same time, I kind of, took a step back because I know that there's not. It's tough to live up to my expectations from the John Carpenter version.
All right.
I mean, I have such an affinity for that movie that I'm just like, if I'm sitting there and trying to compare it to this, it's just not fair.
Gotcha. There definitely seem to be a lot of parallels, but they seem to throw you a big curveball. Not really a big curveball. They try to do something a little bit differently by seeing something, not necessarily the thing, but something frozen in the ice that kind of gets the ball rolling when it thaws out. Did you like
Yes.
that? Did you not like that? Did it take some of the mystery behind what is the thing out of the movie for you, or did you like the new take on it by, all right, I kind of have an idea of what this thing is. It's some sort of alien monster hybrid that's taking over people's bodies, and did you like that? Did you not like it? Was it,
Um, and this is actually where it's especially good if you have seen the '82 version of the Thing. Is that this is very much intended to be um, a prequel, a direct prequel to it. Whereas the original version, in the '82 version, they make reference to it and essentially establish it as a sequel to the original. But what they did in the '82 version was take footage from the original and essentially I hate using the word pretend, but they essentially treat it as if it's archival footage of the team you are watching in the 2011 version.
no, that's cool.
And when Kurt Russell and when the characters go to what is this location, the one used in this version of the Thing, you see that they have this big block of ice that has been blown out. The camp is destroyed. They're finding frozen corpses having committed suicide. They found the Thing. Uh, they I like how they took most of those references from the '82 version and shows you how it got that way.
Right.
And I mean, again, if you've already seen it, you already know that the Thing is some sort of alien monster. Here, they're like, okay, we're assuming that you've already seen this, you know what it is. Well, this is how the carnage you saw, that you didn't get to see much story of, the carnage you saw in the other camp, this is how that happened. So I really did appreciate the callback, I guess, to the 82 version, basically saying this is why you saw this carnage, because this happened.
Cool. Right. Um, so right off the bat, I kind of got a little chuckle out of it because they go to meet up with the scientist, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I know from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World fame and also Death Proof. She was in Grindhouse with the Tarantino half, which was Death Proof. She was the cheerleader who got stuck with the creepy guy who gave the car. He plays a paleontologist who, right off the bat, I was like, you kind of tell she was going to be the protagonist. She was going to be the main person you're kind of following along within the group.
Yes.
But I found it really funny that they set her up with like, what's going on down there? Why do you want me to go? And he's like, all I can tell you is we found something and we're going to Antarctica. She's like, I don't know. Okay, I'm in. Like, it was so easy for her to just be like, careful at first about joining this mission, joining this exploration. But then he can't tell her much, and she's like, my curiosity's piqued. I'm in. And I was like, kind of weak, but okay. It gets her down there.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'd rewatching it, and it's like, you could have thrown in like, oh, this is, you'll never get an opportunity like this again. You'd be like, okay.
It reminds me a little bit of the scene in Jurassic Park. Right after he scares the kid with the claw, they go to the camper, and there's the owner of Jurassic Park who talks Dr. Grant into going down there. He did a little bit more convincing than this guy, but it was you can draw a comparison between the two scenes.
Oh, definitely.
But once you get down there, that's where you see the site. You're shortly introduced to, as I mentioned earlier, the block of ice with the alien in there, and that's when things start happening.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts about the events that happened after that? I mean, you can spoil away. I don't want to jump right into it myself, but for instance, they start doing the drilling through the ice to get some sort of sample, and then you see the block of ice thawing out, and that's when things start to get really funky. Were you into that, or did you want them to hold on to the mystery of what exactly was in the ice and have some more implied things happening, more traditional horror movie kind of things where things are implied as opposed to just, they kind of came out and was like, all right, here's a thing and we're going to see some messed up stuff. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. There was part of me that it kind of wants you, because in the 82 version, the thing is already, in fact, if you watch it enough times, you can start to see little clues as to who may or may not be the thing. But they spend a lot of time with it being very subtle, where they catch like a glimpse of a person being being absorbed by the thing, or the thing trying to turn into someone else. But you don't really see it in its true form, really, until like the very end, is when it really starts to morph and do all the sorts of crazy stuff. In this one, where it just kind of breaks out and it's there, I'm not going to say that I hated that happened, because realistically it's logical. At this point, the thing is completely frozen. The only way any of the other events between this movie or the John Carpenter one are ever going to happen is if someone foolishly says, you know what, let's try and get a sample of it and essentially open the door to let evil in.
Right.
I guess at this point, it's necessary for this to happen in order for everything else, that will follow it to happen.
Right, and I guess the only other thing that could have happened was have the block of ice continue to just thaw to the point where the thing just escapes, but it does that off camera, and the guy who in the movie goes down to look at the thing and who ends up being attacked by the thing first when it breaks out of the ice, he just sees the block with nothing there, and it kind of gets the ball rolling. So either that way it would have been kind of cheesy as well, kind of predictable, and like, oh yeah, I've seen this a bunch of times in horror movies. Mike Myers does that all the time in the Halloween movies, where you think he's in prison and then you turn back and he's gone. So I definitely kind of liked it because it made it fresher from doing that. It made it, even though it's kind of going down a path other horror movies have gone down before too. In regards to the thing, it made this movie fresh, and you're like, sweet, this one I'm just gonna see some messed up shit, and I think that's what made this version fun.
Yeah, again, you're not gonna get anything else happening until it breaks out. So at that point, it's like, why? Part of me is like, why dilute that? Just let it happen. And they did it. They did it well, where the thing crawls out, and for a while they don't know where it is.
Right.
They know that it's out, but the moment it gets out there, once it's outside, now if you've been following the storyline to any degree, you know that the thing could do, basically any other character. You could sit there and have someone get attacked off camera, and then next thing you know, they're the thing. That's kind of the plus side of having it happen like this, is that, yeah, everyone's out looking for it, but because of the nature of the thing, once it gets out and they don't see where it's gone, it could be anybody. And
right.
And now, let the horror begin.
Right. So you mentioned before on the 82 version, they did something to check to see if everybody's still human. Here in the 2011 version, they do a similar plot line where Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character finds the teeth on the bathroom floor, notices the blood in the shower, and is like, all right, this is clearly a clue of some sort on how we can tell who's human and who's been taken over by the thing. And they start checking people's teeth. Did you like that approach, or did you prefer other ways of doing it?
I liked it in the sense that it gave you a perfectly logical, reasonable way of determining who is and who isn't the thing without directly copying the John Carpenter version.
Right.
To those who may be unaware, in the John Carpenter version, they come to the determination that every part of a person who has been consumed by the thing is in and of itself a separate version of the thing. So they determine that its natural instinct will be to get away from something that will cause it pain. And so they, light up some copper wire and touch everyone's blood, because they figure a human's blood it's just blood, it's just going to burn a little bit and nothing will happen. But the thing will react. This way, they came up with a means of saying, okay, this person is human, this person may not be, without, ripping it off. And again, it was completely logical. It fits in perfectly. It's like, this is an animal, an alien, and it can copy a person down to a T. But things that are metallic, it can't copy, because obviously it's metallic. So this way, like, okay, people have splints in their arms or legs from surgery. It can't copy them. So if you have that, you must not be the thing. Anyone who has crowns, anyone who has fillings that are made of silver or this or that, they can't be the thing. And they use it again at the very end. Now, whether you want to talk about that character and that part at the end, you can do that now, or we can do that later, because I kind of like that part too.
It does play into the whole checking people's feelings things, because prior to that, you had the helicopter accident when one of the passengers in the helicopter was taken over by the thing, which is great, because I thought it was going to be one guy and it ends up being another guy who actually ends up being the thing, which is great misdirection kind of shock for you. Especially because at that point, all right, someone in the helicopter is going to burst out and attack everybody. But they definitely throw you the curveball, like, is it going to be this guy or that guy? That was a lot of fun. But yeah, the helicopter crash, where two of the people from the crash show back up at the campsite, and the paleontologist is immediately like, all right, I'm already suspicious of everybody that I knew was still alive. You guys show up out of nowhere. you guys go in this room and you're on lockdown. She was just suspicious of everybody, and she's checking everybody's teeth. She has a couple guys separated from the rest of the group who she's like they either avoid showing their teeth because they're like, this is crazy. How's that going to prove I'm human or not? Or they just admit, yeah, I don't have any fillings, so you're going to be suspect of me, and they walk over to the side. Then she grabs the guys from the plane helicopter crash. That's where things got really messed up. And
Yeah, everything kind of went to shit after that.
that was the scene, right, where the guy ends up, the thing bursts out of the guy. And is that the scene where his head morphs in with another dude's head, or was that a little bit later on?
What happens with him is, and this is kind of, I think this is kind of like a reference to the John Carpenter version. They accidentally, when they shoot one of the guys who was definitely not the Thing, one of the cool guys, one of the guys, okay, he's going to help us out. He's not the Thing. He's got one of the flamethrowers. They shoot him, but they also end up shooting through the gas tank for the flamethrower. And everyone realizes, oh crap, the thing's going to explode. The tank explodes, takes out the lead Norwegian scientist who was running the camp. And just like in the 82 version, he seems to have passed out. He seems to be unconscious. So two of the other guys are carrying him back into the main room, where they're trying to determine who is the Thing and who isn't the Thing. And instead of it being his head coming off, his arms break off and turn to like little Thing spiders. And that's kind of when everything goes to hell. He starts, one hand spider attacks one guy. He uses like a tentacle or something to skewer another guy. And then it's near the end of that scene is when he kind of spider crawls on top of the guy he skewered with his tentacle and kind of face morphs with him, and it's gross, but I love it.
Really weird, and especially when you see it later on. Kind of like, am I going to see the guy again? And then you're doing it just looks really weird with like the Siamese twin, the Thing, and it was it was just one of the more messed up moments of the movie. But then you brought up the guy who was in the helicopter crash, who you were starting to wonder, like, all right, has this guy turned? Is he still human, or is he the Thing? They get out of the campsite. They're about to, leave, hop in one of the vehicles to find some humans, find another campsite where they can maybe get some help. And that's when the paleontologist becomes suspicious again and notices his earring is no longer in. And that was what you were talking about before.
Well,
what did you like that? Did you like that little one last little scene with the Thing, one last little bit that you didn't necessarily see coming? Like I thought they were gonna drive off and you'd have that survival moment, but they threw in that last little bit where it's like, nope, shit's still going down. What were your thoughts?
When it comes to that scene, part of me, and the audience won't know this, but you obviously do. You know me, I always look for callbacks or references to earlier things that make reference to something like this. This, I think, really was
definitely
one of them. Because Joel Egerton's character is very much like Kurt Russell's was in the 82 version of the Thing. He was the protagonist of the 82 version. And I feel like they're kind of playing on that. People who may have seen it are kind of expecting the Kurt Russell-esque character to be one of the heroes. And I think they're kind of using that to kind of make you think, oh, there's no way that the guy who's like Kurt Russell's character could possibly be the Thing. Until the very end when she realizes, wait a minute, where's your earring? And that's kind of last minute, you're like, oh. Because, maybe it's just me, but I honestly feel like people who are familiar with the A2 version are going to kind of be pulling for the Kurt Russell-esque character. So to have him be the Thing at the end, it's a nice way of throwing those fans a curveball.
Yeah, I was definitely, figuring they were dealing the female protagonist the entire time. Like clearly, she was the focal point. She was, you know, the person, like I said earlier, who you're going on this expedition with. So, and it reminded me of a lot of other movies like Prometheus. You know, you're kind of going along with Noomi Rapace's character as opposed to, you know, a dude character, which is a nice change of pace too. You know, whatever. But I definitely see what you're saying, where you're thinking Joel Edgerton's gonna do one thing and be human, and then they throw you that last curveball. And it was a nice way to end it.
It is.
And then you clearly know the 1982 version better than I do, but clearly the dog just before the credits, he plays a very important role. Want to go into detail on that?
Again, spoil the time for anyone who's still actually watching this and not have seen the others. The dog is essentially at least in this movie, essentially it's the Thing's last attempt to get out. But of course, and they actually make a point of having the music at the end. It is now the same music as the beginning of the John Carpenter version of The Thing. If there was ever kind of any ambiguity as to whether this is supposed to lead into it, there's your clue. They're now playing, that's the exact same scenario. The dog, the two Norwegians flying around the helicopter trying to shoot it. They even get the music playing, just so that you know, we are now entering the 1982 version of The Thing. Much better.
Gotcha. All right. I was trying to do it upstairs to avoid people coming in and out of the house, which is a possibility right now. So just trying to do it up there, and apparently the internet connection got too weak. So I'll just download this and do some editing. Technical problems fixed, but you were talking about the dog.
Yes.
Towards the end.
So you didn't catch my last part about the dog?
Missed it. Technical problems. This is an experiment. Okay. It happens.
It does. Let's see. Oh. The thing with the dog is, again, spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen this already, but the dog is the Thing's last attempt to escape, to kind of sneak his way into another human compound and try and go unnoticed. But what happens is he's being chased by the last survivor from the camp and a member of the rescue team who's come in to, I don't know if he's just there for supplies or what have you, but he sees the camp is destroyed and he has no idea what's going on. The last survivor basically tells him, get up, that's not a dog. We have to go and get that thing, we have to stop that thing. And as they're flying over trying to gun down the dog, you can hear the music from the beginning of the 82 version of The Thing.
Right.
And this is pretty much their way of saying, we are now entering The Thing as everyone else knows it after this. From this point forward, we are now entering the John Carpenter version of The Thing. Same music, same scenario, go.
So, now that you've seen The Thing, the remake, not remake, the prequel of sort, even though it's the exact same title, did it live up to your hype? Does it enhance the story any for you, or do you kind of wish that they left things alone and leave the John Carpenter 1982 version alone and not even done a version of The Thing today?
No, I like it. It still has. I mean, to me, it's never gonna quite be as good as the John Carpenter version. It's not going to quite throw me off the way that one did, but it's still enjoyable. It still has a lot of what I liked about The Thing. It still has a lot. It still has a lot of misdirection. It still has a lot of creepy stuff of things doing that a person who's unfamiliar with it may not expect. I mean, I personally wasn't expecting the hands falling off and becoming thing spiders.
Right.
Uh, there, there's one inconsistency that part of me is kind of like, it's it comes from having seen the John Carpenter version enough times to be like, wait a minute, that that that, that isn't right. But and that's when and that's the state of the Siamese twin thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when in the John Carpenter version, when they find it, it's not charred. And if I remember correctly, they find him frozen, but his skin still looks very normal. Whereas in this one, it's clearly burnt to a crisp.
Definitely, yeah.
But other than that, no, I enjoyed every last second of it. There's never a point of me being like, ugh. It was never tedious. It never, I never found it. Again, it's the same thing. It was never tedious. I never had that loss of suspension of disbelief, and there's still parts of it that still caught me, And really, unless you're going to be like a super purist about it, what more could you really want?
And going back to something you mentioned earlier, where you're kind of like saying if you haven't seen the '82 version, shame on you. The thing I liked about this movie was it could be your first time seeing any version of The Thing, and it stands on its own. You don't have to have seen, especially it helps with being a prequel, but it's not even, any sort of prequel where it definitely helps if you've seen the original. Like if you watched Paranormal Activity 2, which was a prequel to the first one. Yeah, it was a prequel to the first one, and then 3 was a prequel to that one. You're definitely kind of missing out on a little bit of like, why is this being here, or why are we care about this being here with this version of The Thing? You're just kind of being introduced to the entire concept for the first time. And then if you watch the '82 version, it would expand upon that and give you more of the story. But it's definitely a cool way of reintroducing the story, but not and respecting what's been done, but giving you a fresh take on it at the same time. I really dug that.
That I think is one of the benefits of just the nature of of how the story of The Thing is. Because it's an alien. Obviously, no one's going to know what it is, so that any character that stumbles upon it, they're going to go through that same process of trying to figure out what it is, of realizing what it does, and going through that stage of mistrust and paranoia because now you discover what it does. You don't know who's the thing, and
Right.
That's the great thing about it, is that no matter what, you're always going to get that somewhat necessary exposition, but it's never tedious because it fits in perfectly.
Definitely.
People are going to need to go through that process of being like, wait, oh my god. You're always going to have it. And so you could just keep doing it and keep reintroducing it, and every time it gets reintroduced, just because of the nature of what it is, it's going to make perfect sense.
So is this now up there with your top horror movies? Is it, top 10, top 25?
It might fit into my top 25.
Not quite.
It's always tough for me to kind of nail down my favorite horror movies, but the John Carpenter version is definitely in the top 5, if not the top 3.
Because that's definitely one of the things I wanted to get into now that we've kind of discussed the movie. It's October, your favorite month for movies. Typically do horror movie-thons at movie night here. I want to know your top 5 horror movies, and I think I know a couple of them. Obviously, The Thing is one of them. You just said it was one of them.
Yes, I did.
Another one that I think is up there. The other 2 that I think are somewhere in your top 5. And you could correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll let you guess and see how they rate with me.
No specific order here, because I don't know that.
Okay.
Obviously, The Thing, The Shining.
Yes.
Night of the Living Dead.
Yes.
That's as far as I want to go, because beyond that, I'm not sure where you're going to go with the other 2 for your top 5.
It's a tough one. It really is kind of tough to really nail it down.
I was going
Um,
to say the original Dawn of the Dead, but with Night of the Living Dead being up there, I wasn't sure if Dawn was going to be part of that.
uh, hmm. Well, let's see. Definitely. I mean, you're right. Definitely Night of the Living Dead. Although there's parts of me that kind of toss between the 1968 version done by George Romero and the 1990 remake done by Tom Savini. I think the Tom Savini one may have been actually the first one that I'd seen, so I may kind of have a preference to it. Uh, but if for no other reason than uh, historical purposes,
Right,
I have to have an affinity for the original. I mean, it kind of sets the tone for everything we know about zombie movies since.
right. And
Um,
you are a zombie aficionado of some sort, so
I am, I am. Thank you. Uh, The Shining. Part of the thing I love about The Shining, and Stephen King has a nice way of doing this, but I feel like The Shining might hit it perfectly. To anyone who's seen this, they probably know what I'm talking about. You obviously know, we've seen it before.
okay.
But there comes a part where Jack is talking to essentially the ghost of his predecessor, the previous caretaker of the hotel, and he's looking at him. He's like, and you can clearly see that Jack is having a hard time computing this. He's thinking to himself, "No, you're dead. I was told that you had committed suicide or whatever. When I took this job, you shouldn't be here." And when he essentially tries to tell this to the ghost basically has no idea what he's talking about. Yet at the same time, he tells of the incident that Jack is describing to him, and Jack is still looking at him like, what? And as the ghost is essentially saying to him, your child is, he has a special power. Uh, my girls were something like that, but they kept defying me, so I had to correct them, as he so succinctly puts it. And Jack is still looking at him with this confused look. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes on, and the ghost goes on to tell him, "And when my wife attempted to stop me, I had to correct her." And for a minute, Jack is still confused, looking at him like, "What?" But as he finishes talking to the ghost, you can see the smile creep along his face. And right there, that is the moment when you know that Jack has gone off the deep end.
Right.
That he is now officially completely insane. You have literally seen the line. The confused look, sane, smile, not sane. And Stephen King has a way of doing that with some of his movies. That is the perfect
No, I have to
perfect
ask,
version of that.
you think that's necessarily? Have you read the book?
I have not.
Okay, so I'm wondering with that, is it Stephen King, what he wrote in the book, or was that something that Stanley Kubrick did with his direction? Because there's a documentary, Room 237. If you haven't seen that documentary, it goes into a lot of the conspiracy theories and a lot of the weird things that line up with the movie. That there was like, at one point they were even talking about how within The Shining, Kubrick was indicating that he filmed the Apollo landing on the moon, Apollo space mission, that rocket landing on the moon. All these weird, subliminal messages in the movie. At one point, you see a guy when Jack walks into the office and shakes the dude's hand. The dude who gets up from behind the desk stands in a certain way where you see his dick. It's implied. You don't actually see. It's not real. But if you look at it a certain way, they tossed it in there.
There's the guy in the bear costume.
You might think it's just people looking too far into it, which could definitely certainly be the case. It could just be coincidence. But with where you're going at, some of that, I'm curious if that's Stephen King or if that's Kubrick.
That's a good question. I suppose I'd have to ask my cousin. I guess she's read like all of his books. She might know if that was something that was written into the story originally, or if it was something that Kubrick added in.
Right. Because I think
But
I read
either,
somewhere where like Stephen King wasn't thrilled with what Kubrick did. So
yeah, that could be one of those things.
clearly, The Shining's up there on your list. But the next two that, and again, in no particular order, the next two that round out your top 5 horror movies.
Somewhere in there is Eli Roth, who is like us, representing Massachusetts. Eli Roth's Cabin Fever.
Yep.
It is, to me, the perfect vision of one of the creepiest things ever. Germs. He has this perfect way of creating this disease scenario, perfectly believable, and at the same time, perfectly horrific. It's this thing, you're in a place that you're not really familiar with, you're not from there. You catch this germ, you originally don't know where it comes from. At the same time, as you progress, thinking that you have eluded the disease, little do you know, the whole time you have just been contaminating yourself with it more and more and more. And when you start to show signs, you go looking for help, and you're not getting it. Everyone around you is like, you're a contagion. We just need to get rid of you, and he's able to really capture just how bad a situation like that can really get. And it's almost a perfect horror movie as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. I just have to check that one out, but it's upstairs in the collection.
Nice.
And the last one to round out your top 5.
Ooh.
Wizard of Gore.
No. No.
Well, come on, it's...
I hate that movie. It's terrible.
Oh, it's awesome. That's what makes it fun. It's so bad that it's good.
Oh, you're right. I mean, it's terrible to the point of hilarious, but it's still terrible. This is a tough one.
Scream 2.
No. Denied.
The Stuff.
Hilarious movie, but no, does not fit in there.
When Marshmallow Fluff attacks.
It is a horror movie, but it has to be one of the single cheesiest ones ever.
That was hilarious. Very fun. Come on, rapid fire. First movie that comes to your mind that is up there.
I might say Event Horizon.
Really?
I remember it described one time on AMC, and it hits it perfectly. It answers the haunted house question.
Okay.
Why don't you just leave the haunted house? Well, when the haunted house is in the vacuum of space, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are now stuck with a ghost. Enjoy.
Cool.
So I think that will be the closer for my top 5.
The Thing, Shining, Night of the Living Dead, Event Horizon, and
Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever. Nice.
Yes.
All right, well, I think that will wrap it up for this episode of Movie Night Spotlight. Thanks again, Liam, for doing this Google Plus experiment.
Not a problem, sir.
Chat. We'll try and get some things edited and posted soon. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go check out The Thing, both 82 and 2011. All right, for Movie Night Spotlight, I'm Dave Lindsay.
I'm William O'Leary.
Have a good one.
What up?